All right. Do you have Matthew chapter 22? Do you have verse 34? Oh, I hear pages turning. And it says, but when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. Then one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question, testing him and saying, Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? Jesus said to him, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. You may be seated. As we've been walking together and talking about a purpose-driven church, where we've been hanging our hat is on that first purpose, which is what? I heard a few say it. Say it loud and proud. Worship. We were created to worship God. As a matter of fact, I've heard some say that the only thing truly qualified to worship God is God. And that's the reason why God had to breathe a part of himself into man, into woman, so that we would be the right kind of vessel that could give worship back to God. Because God is so great and mighty that nobody can really worship God but God. And that's why even Jesus had to die for us and cleanse us, because once the sin was committed, then we were not able to inhabit the same Eden space as God. Do you see that? A space that was defined by worship. Even right now, around the throne of God, there's nothing but worship happening. The elders are worshiping, angels are worshiping, because God is deserving of worship. And so this entire pursuit, as we journey through life and give ourselves back to Christ, is about us taking our right position again and being able to worship the true and living God. And we are able to do that through Jesus Christ. Now, just for review, to catch everybody up, worship is expressing our love to God for who he is, what he has said, and what he's doing, according to Rick Warren. Worship, I believe, is working to show God love and respect. That's one of the reasons why Jesus then says, hey, husbands, love your wives the way Christ loved the church. And then he turns around and says, wives, respect your husband. Do you see that? Now, I know I've covered this before, but most of the time, tied to the DNA of masculinity is viewing love through the lens of respect. Growing up, a lot of fights happened because brothers would say, you disrespected me. I never heard a brother get in a fight saying, man, you didn't love me. Every fight I saw was, man, you disrespected me. You disrespected my family. You disrespected my moms. Am I telling the truth? And so our worship is tied to how we respect God. And how we respect God is tied to how we respect God's people. It's right here in the text. As a matter of fact, when it came to children, Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you're doing to me. If you don't respect the children, if you don't treat them right, if you don't love them right, you're doing it to me. The same is true even in our households. We were created in the image of God. The Ruach breath was given to us, which means there is literally a piece of God in me, and I'm the image and reflection of God. Which means if we respect one another, we are also respecting God. But when we disrespect one another, then we're also disrespecting God. In this text, Jesus is unpacking the greatest commandment, to which everything else must emanate from. In other words, he's saying, if you don't get anything else right, you got to get this right. If you don't know how to sing, that's okay, but get this right. If you don't know the flow of worship on Sunday morning, if you don't know what an invocational prayer is, if you don't know what an invitation is, if you don't understand any of those things, if you don't even know the way Jesus told us to pray with our Father who art in heaven, you know what? It's okay as long as you get this right. And here's the other. If you get all the other right but not get this right, then you have tried to build a structure on a foundation that's made of nothing but sand. On the beach. Which means water's going to come up when the tide gets high. And it's going to wash away whatever structure has been built. We build too many religious structures on other commandments. Some that God didn't even give. We just said it and said God said it. I heard one person say that their parents told them that they can't play with marbles because God said marble not. It's about how we love and respect God. And so what's been happening up until this point, there's been pretty serious work on both the Sadducees and now the Pharisees trying to have a gotcha moment with Jesus. And so they're questioning him. They're trying to undermine him. And when the Sadducees' effort did not work, they got a lawyer involved. So somebody called up their boy who was real smart and credentialed. And they said, we want you to come down because we know you're a great debater. And Jesus is down here and, you know, he's kind of run circles around everybody else, but we think that you can get him. And we want you to come down here and get him into incriminating himself with his own words. There seems to be a lot of that going on these days. Let me keep going. He, out of the gate, comes off disrespectful. Here's why. He refers to him as teacher, deliberately not referring to him as Lord, in front of his disciples. You ever been in a situation where somebody tried to make you look bad or belittle you or call you outside of your identity in front of your folk? Especially somebody who thought they were smarter than you. Or this is the only time in Matthew's gospel where this word for lawyer is even found. Here he is. They've called in a big gun, and out of the gate, by how he refers to Jesus, he's coming off mad disrespectful. Teacher, because you know that's all you are to me. See, we've got to be careful how we refer to people. Because there's respect tied to how you refer to them. And the reference is different depending on the perspective. Because the experience can be different. Can I give you an example? I remember when I was a youth pastor and youth director in Brooklyn, and the children like to refer to me as Pastor B, or they just call me B. That did not go over well with the elders of the church. But here was the difference. For them, there was no respect tied to the term reverend because they had had negative experiences with people who had those titles. For those kids, the title Pastor B or just B was a term of endearment that meant they felt safe and connected to me, which means if they were forced to use a different title that was associated to negative experiences, that they would have felt like actually calling me reverend was disrespectful. Now, the only reason why we're there is because people with the title have disrespected folk and disrespected God. And now the experience has caused people to look at the title differently. In this case, he knew exactly what he was doing. He calls him teacher. Now, let me pause there and say that's why we need to make sure that we communicate the term with the endearment or the emotion that we attach to it. Because depending on our experience, we may misinterpret what people are calling us or people are calling other people. Does that make sense? I remember when my wife's grandmother, or my wife's mother, became a grandmother, she was struggling with the title grandma. Because she felt like, I'm too young to be a grandma. She wasn't too young to be a grandma. I'm just saying. But we come up with these different titles because when somebody means something to you, then their title means something. What you call them means something. What we call God means something. It means something. When we call them friend, mother to the motherless, father to the fatherless, the great I am that I am, the lily in the valley, the bright and morning star, the Son of Man, the Son of God, all these names, these titles mean something. Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah Rapha. They all mean something, and we've got to be careful. In other words, make sure you put some spec on his name. That's all. So he comes up and he poses a question that is a gotcha question to Jesus. What is the greatest commandment? Rabbis counted during this time 613 commands, 365 negative commands for the number of days, and 248 positive commands for the number of body parts. There was a view that all commandments were equal. What the lawyer's trying to do is get Jesus to say that one of the other commandments is greater, so that then he can say, got you. Got you. What you're teaching is not right. The lawyer is trying to get a debate going with the hope that Jesus would say something that would incriminate himself. There are some people who are just waiting for you to mess up. Can I go further? There are some people who are trying to influence your mess up moment. Have you ever had somebody put you in a position but not give you enough information to excel at the position? Give you an assignment but not tell you all the things you needed to do to... And then when you come back to them thinking you did a good thing, they say, oh, that's not what you were supposed to do at all. Then they reprimand you. They were just setting you up for a mess up. So that then they can say that it's only because of you that you messed up. They're trying to lure you in so that they can discredit you, say that you do not belong and say that you are not right. And they're trying to do this with our Lord. They will give you misinformation, tell you the wrong thing. And then you find out, after you've acted on the wrong thing, that now you were set up. That's a very disheartening feeling. Especially when it comes from someone that you think's supposed to have your back. I mean, this guy's giving all lawyers a bad name, isn't he? He's just, you're supposed to be for me. You're supposed to be religious. You've been sent here by the Pharisees. Y'all are supposed to be the spiritual people. But sometimes it's the spiritual folk, or the so-called spiritual folk, who are the ones actually trying to undermine Jesus. And here's why. Because people don't like it when Jesus operates outside of the way they think Jesus should operate. I don't like the way you talk. I don't like right now, somebody's going to watch this on TV and be all torn up because I'm in a t-shirt. It's just, how dare he wear a t-shirt in the Reverend Dr. Augustus Robinson Jr. Chapel? Why? Because when Jesus does not fit into the box or the scope we feel Jesus should fit into, we decide we should crucify him instead of conform to him. And so now I've got to get a rational reason to do it. See, notice they're not bold enough to just come out and do it. You know, I'm not bold enough to just stand up and say, Jesus, I don't like you. I think you're wrong. And I think you're a perpetrator. No, I've got to now lure you in to doing something so that then I can point to something and see, that's why you're wrong. Am I in the text? Pirazo is the Greek word used here for test. The only other place it's used in Matthew is when the devil tests Jesus in the wilderness. Which means there are some people who are going to test you just like the devil. In church. I love to say it just happens outside the church, but I've been in church too long. And in this text, it's the religious people who are creating the test. Why? Because I don't know what it is, but we love to create tests. Throughout history, we've created horrible tests that determine whether or not you measure up. Brown bag test. Tests to determine whether you can vote or not. Historically, a lot of times we have created tests in order to create an oppressive structure to keep one group out. Our state in particular has led in creating tests to oppress children, particularly of color. I didn't mean to talk about this tonight, But notice Jesus does not pop off and say, you disrespected me. I'm about to call down Michael and the angels. Peter, whip out your knife. This joker right here trying to mess with me. Is this too real? Let me call Lele. Let me call my cousin up on the phone right now. He about to handle you. Or Jesus could have done it. Let me talk to my dad. I'm about to go get my daddy. Coming up here disrespecting me, questioning me. I'm God. You're not going to talk to me this way. No. He does the same thing that he did when he was tested by the devil. He leans on the word. He quotes the Shema from Deuteronomy 6:4-5. Tells him, oh, love the Lord your God. All your heart, all your mind, all your soul. And then he adds, and likewise, love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, it's not just about loving God with a piece of you. It's about loving God with all of you. Which means you have pieces of you that will be in internal conflict at any moment. Your heart will go to war with your mind. What you feel will be in direct conflict with what you think. You can know that the Lord is going to rescue you and save you and heal you. But you can feel like none of that's about to happen. Or you can feel like you should trust this person, but your mind can say, you better not trust them at all. And now you've got to reconcile what's going on between your heart and your mind. And we're not even going to talk about soul tonight. We're going to save that to next week. And what he's saying is, you've got to learn first how to just love God with your heart. And we first need to understand what is love in the first place that he's talking about. In this text specifically, the Greek word here is agapeo, which is the verb form of agape. And literally what he's saying is you've got to love God unconditionally. No matter what you're going through, love me. No matter what it looks like, hang in there and just love me. I know you feel forsaken right now, but love me. I know you're in the land of ambiguity and you're wondering, my Lord, why have you forsaken me? How could you allow this to happen? My greatest fears have come to fruition. My marriage is in trouble. The kids are acting up. Finances are in trouble. I know you're going through, but can you love me unconditionally? See, we always talk about how God loves us, but this text is about how we love him. And we know God loves us unconditionally. We know that nothing would ever separate us from the love of God. But have there been things that separated your love from God? Have there been things that cause you to say, you know what? I've had enough, God. I'm not going to love you like that anymore. It's related to an Old Testament word here for covenant love and steadfast love. In other words, it's a love that says no matter what comes my way, we've got to be steadfast. I don't understand it, God, but I'm still going to love you through it. I don't agree with this, God, but I'm going to love you through it. The heart in Jewish tradition was where all emotions emanated from. It's the seat of your emotions. And so he's saying, love me enough to trust me with your emotions. In other words, don't shield or hide your emotions from me. Because the last time a man hid from me, It was because he wasn't loving me right. Adam and Eve hid. We live in a society that teaches us to hide our emotions, which is why it's so difficult for some of us when we get in worship and that spirit hits you. And now there's a rumbling and an eruption because God's saying, give me those emotions. Give me those emotions, that fear, that love, that cry that you're getting ready to give me your emotions. And what happens with those who want to hide our emotions, when we get around somebody else, when you get around a Deaconess Cole who says, no, I'm going to give my emotions to God, you'll be wanting her to stop because she's getting ready to trigger in you your emotions. Because worship is contagious. Somebody starts shouting, makes you want to shout. Somebody starts screaming, makes you want to scream. Somebody starts crying, makes you want to cry. And I don't want to give God my emotions, so I need you to stop. I need you to cut that out. I need you to muzzle your emotions. And God is saying, no, love the Lord your God with all your heart. Baby, you cry as much as you need to cry. You snot as much as you need to snot. You pass out as much as you need to pass out. You can be as scared as you want to be. Just give it to me. Give it to me. That's loving God with your heart. Loving God with how you feel. It's how you feel. It's about loving God despite how you feel. That's why on the days you don't feel like coming, by the time you left, you feel like you're glad you came. Am I telling the truth? Because God goes, oh, you loving me right today. I'm going to make sure you feel my love back at you. It's the days you don't feel like pressing your way, are the days that God shows up and says, I'm going to minister to your feelings. I'm going to speak to your heart. Woo. When we say speak to my heart, Lord, we're saying speak to my emotions. Speak to the way I feel right now. I don't like what's going on in our country. I don't like the way they talk to me at work today. I need you to speak to my heart. Before you speak, sometimes you need to ask God to speak to. God, before I go in here and deal with these kids, I need you to speak to. Before I go in here to this performance appraisal, I need you to speak to. Before I go down here to this school and meet with. Before I talk to my husband when he gets home, I need you to. See, what happens in worship is when we truly worship, it exposes your heart. In the presence of God. But nobody likes to feel exposed. So if you want to be comfortable, you won't be able to be comfortable and worship. Because God's going to walk through the garden and say, where are you? And I need you to come on out here and meet me with your naked self. And so worship makes us vulnerable, and we even feel like other people sense that vulnerability. And folk even act out of that, you know. You have a big crying Sunday, nothing really necessarily is going on, you just need a good cry. You just need a good, every now and then. I'm going to speak on my behalf. Maybe you don't. Every now and then, I just need a good cry with Jesus. Things are all right at home. Nobody's leaving or anything. I'm fine. The church is well. Nobody's ticked me off or anything. I just need a good cry with Jesus. But see, folk who don't understand that will start making up reasons behind your cry. You know, I saw her Facebook post and you know, I saw her husband in the store the other day. Something looked off it. And now that I saw her crying in church. Sorry. No, I just needed to worship, that's all. There's some depths in my heart that Jesus is digging out. He exposed some stuff in me in worship today and showed me about myself, and he's performing a heart surgery, that's all. And I needed to cry it out. I saw my wretchedness. I made a mistake. I saw what he wants to do and how he wants to take me to another level. And I was overwhelmed in the goodness and the mercy of God that was covering me. And I just needed to cry. I needed to shout it out. That's all that was wrong. If you just come and ask, I'll tell you. It's the worshiper in me that wants to love God and expose myself in his presence. Because whatever you expose of yourself to God, God will then deliver, heal, and deal with in your life. So when we worship, when we expose our hearts to God, God goes to work in dealing with the impurities of our heart. Because whatever's in your heart is going to direct your path and your mouth. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. James said, and the mouth is on fire from hell. And that like a bit in the horse's mouth, it controls which direction you go in. Because whatever you speak, you begin to become. And you begin to see. Because the same power that created the heavens and the earth, the Word, that became flesh and dwelled among us, the Word, God says, greater works will you do. There's power in your words. And sometimes God will allow us to get in situations so that we can hear ourselves, so that then we'll know some of the stuff that's in our heart. I know, because I've been there so many times. And you know it because you say, I wish I would not have. Some of us have said it and said, oh, you know, I didn't mean that. Oh, too late now. You may not have meant to say it, but you meant it in that moment. Why? Because it was in your heart. Your mind is saying, well, we don't really mean that, but your heart was saying, oh, yes, we do. You're conflicted right now. Emotionally, you mean every bit of that, but mentally, no, I don't like where this is going. And the resolve is not watch what you say. The resolve is avail your heart to God. Because there are too many people trying to train their mouths without transforming their hearts. Too many people are trying to train their mouths without transforming their hearts. That will make a good politician, but not a good disciple. No shade at politicians, no shade. And see, that's what keeps on happening even with our politicians right now. Their mouths keep on telling on themselves. And what we then do is one side or the other just tries to make excuses for the revelation of their heart that's coming out. Just talking about the word. I gotta move to close. And so here's why this piece of loving the Lord your God with all your heart, we're just stopping there, it's so important. Whatever you love, you begin to conform your life to. It controls your schedule. You'll work your schedule around it. Why? Because you love it. It's because you love it. We've got a whole plan on this baby that at some point will come into the world. At some point. Why? Because we love her. I've got a whole plan of how I can be there for my wife. Why? Because I love her. The church has a whole plan of how they can support me and my family in this child coming. Why? Because the church has expressed great love for us. You see that? We've got a great plan of how I can still slip in here and do stuff like Bible study. Why? Because I love y'all. And we all love God. Whatever or whoever you love, you begin to conform to, act like. And here is the other piece, and I've got to close with this. It also factors into the identity of how you see yourself. The reason why you have to love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, your mind, and your soul first is because until you do that, you won't even know how to love yourself. Which means then you won't be able to love your neighbor like yourself. See, as I love God, God teaches me how to see myself the way God sees me. And then that causes me to love myself differently. And many of us have gotten caught up in loving someone who made us feel bad about who we were. Loving a job that did not appreciate you and devalued you so that you even questioned yourself and whether you were good enough or your work was good enough or valid enough, or you were with somebody who you tried to love and I tried to love and I tried to love and my love was never good enough. No matter what I did, it was never enough. And because of that, I now feel like that I am not enough. And then you start to love God and God goes, oh, I love you just the way you are. I love you right where you are, with your insecurities, with your weaknesses, with your pain, with your struggles. I love you just the way you are. And then God will mess you up even more than that. God will say, oh, did you know that you were fearfully and wonderfully made? Do you know that I broke the mold after I made you? God will have you feeling so good about yourself that when other people come with a conflicting viewpoint, you go, no, you must not know me. You don't know my value. You don't know my worth. And because of that, I cannot associate myself in close proximity to you because I'm a disciple of Jesus Christ. And he told me when people don't receive me, knock that dust, knock that sand off my sandals and move on to the next row. You're not going to hurt my self-esteem. You're not going to change the way I view myself. I love the Lord my God with all my heart, my mind, and my soul. And he taught me how to love myself. He taught me how to appreciate myself. He taught me that as long as I've got him, that I'll be okay, and I don't have to worry about anything. He'll be my mother. He'll be my daddy. He'll be my doctor. He'll be my lawyer. He'll be everything that I need. I'm going to keep loving him. And then God will connect you to other people who know the love of Jesus, and they'll love you the way that you're supposed to be loved. Why? Because they love him. And so understand this as I close, that some people can't help it because they haven't learned how to love God yet. And when you see it, just pray for them. God, I pray that they would learn your love. I pray that they would fall deeply and passionately in love with you. I pray that they would run into you somewhere and that they would be passionate, because if they fall in love with Jesus, then everything's going to change. When you fall in love with Jesus, where you go changes. Who you want to hang out with changes. What you want to do changes. Your priorities change. When you hang out with Jesus and you fall in love with Jesus, it changes everything about your life. Some of the things you cared about, you don't care about anymore. And things that you didn't care about, you care about a whole lot. And people who don't love God don't understand people who do. So don't expect for them to understand you. Don't expect for them to understand your love. They don't have to understand it. This is about you and God. So we have to say, God, renew in me a clean heart. Clean heart. Why? Because I got some stuff in me. My family put some stuff in me. This world put some stuff in me. And I need you to clean it out so I can love you. I got to close. But here's the real issue. When you have been attached and tied with the wrong love connections, it develops a history that clogs your heart. And so then when God connects you to the right people to love, you can't love the way you would like to love because you've got unclean stuff. Daddy didn't love me right. Mama didn't love me right. Grandma didn't love me right. The preacher didn't love. You've got stuff that got in there, and God has to heal that. Here's the psychology of it. When you go through a wound associated with a relationship and you detach from the relationship and you go on a healing journey, you can only go so far by yourself in the healing. Why? Because a wound that happens in the context of a relationship can only be healed in the context of a relationship. Let me make it plain. If you were in an abusive relationship and you got out of the relationship and you have found healing and you go, I feel good now and I'm ready to reconnect in an intimate relationship. Once you start reconnecting in a new relationship, even though it's healthy, things in you start erupting. Trust issues and whatever the baggage is. Why? Because the context has presented itself again. And there are some things that you can't heal from outside of the same context. And so now that you're in that, now whoever you're with has to partner with you in your healing, because a person that hurts you can also be another person that helps you in your healing. Same thing even happens in every situation. You may have had a mentor that hurt you, a boss that hurt you, a pastor that hurt you. And so now, in order to fully heal from that relationship, eventually God's going to represent the same context, because it's time for you to go to another level in your healing. And God is saying, now I want to deal with this pain so that you can love and receive love the way that I called and created you to receive and give love. And many of our problems with worship is there's stuff that got in our hearts that's hindering our worship. And God is saying, let me clean it out so you can be free. Come on and give God a hand of praise. Hallelujah. And so, when we come back together, I'm going to have us walk through next Wednesday a heart assessment. It's just a few questions that you will ponder and write down. So make sure you bring your notebooks and all that. This will be very private. I want to ask you to share with each other this time on that. So that you can begin digging up, what are some of the things? It won't be horrible or deep. I know it can sound bad, but it'll be really good. Just trust me. So that it can reveal some of the things within our own hearts that God wants to deal with. How's that sound? And as God deals with it, it will increase and intensify our worship. And as we draw closer to Him, He's going to draw closer to us. Come on and give God praise.